So taking a look at shape 12, it's got a couple of details in it that we have not learned yet. I want to start by sketching this front face here, this outline, not including this arc right here. I want to stop at this edge. So let's start a new sketch and go to our front view. And let's grab our lined tool. And I want to start by drawing this line right here to this edge. And it doesn't actually tell us that dimension. We can figure it out though using a little bit of math. So if we start from this edge, if we look from this edge to over here to this edge, that's 1.25. If we follow this edge through the center mark to our extension lines, all the way through our dimension line into this edge over here, this is 1.25. And so hopefully that's obvious. But then what about this width right here on this part of the shape? Well, if you look, this arc on top of our shape has a radius of 0.5. And so let's think about that for a second. If this has a radius of 0.5, that means from the center to each edge is 0.5 inches. And so from this edge to the center is 0.5, and from this edge to the center is 0.5. That means this entire section of our part has a length of 1 inch, 0.5 plus 0.5. Okay, so from here to here is 1 inch, and then from this edge all the way to this edge we said was 1.25. And so with my line tool, if I select my origin and drag it horizontally to the right, I can type that in. I can say, well, 1 plus 1.25, and I can just type that in and hit enter, and it'll actually do the math for me. That gives us the entire width of this line, which is 2.25 inches. So let me grab my line tool again, and then what does it do? Well, it goes up 0.5, and so let me click, drag straight up, type in 0.5, and then click again. And then it drags to the left, where we said a second ago that that dimension right there from here to here is 1.25. So let's type that in and click our mouse. And then we can see that it goes straight up, but it doesn't actually tell us this height. So I'm not going to type in a height. I'm just going to drag it up some distance, and I'm going to right click and hit OK. And I'm going to drag this 0.5 out so I can see my shape. But then if we look over here on the left, we have a line that goes straight vertical, and it has a dimension of 1 inch. And so let me grab my line tool again, click on my origin and drag straight up and tell this to be 1 inch. And so now this is starting to look like the outline of this shape. Now if you look, the center of our circle marks the two edges of this arc. It tells us that the height of this line and the height of this line are horizontal to each other. They are on the same plane. And so let me go ahead and grab my horizontal vertical constraint, and I want to select these 2 points, not the lines, but the points at the top of them. And that will make these 2 dots perfectly horizontal to each other. I'm going to right click and hit cancel. And then connecting these 2 points is a half circle or an arc. And so instead of grabbing my circle tool, I'm actually going to go down to create and find my arc tool. And I want to select the 3-point arc. And we call it the 3-point arc because we have to click 3 times. And so I'm going to start my first click on this left dot, my second click on this right dot, and then I want to make my third click above the 2. And I'm going to right click and hit OK. And so now we have this arc coming out of it. And what is the radius of this arc? Well, it's a radius of 0.5. And so if I grab my dimension tool and I select this arc, remember, anytime you are dimensioning a partial circle, it'll give you the radius. Anytime you dimension a full circle, it'll give you the diameter. And so I'm going to select, and it's asking for the radius is 0.5, and hit enter. And now we have a fully constrained sketch. Now, I could have, let me hit Control Z a couple times. I could have instead found my tangent constraint and selected my arc and my line. And that would have also given me that dimension because it makes this arc tangent with this line, which gives it the same width as this line. And it can't be tangent to this line without being tangent to this line over here as well. And so now if I select it, the radius is still 0.5. And so that could have been another way that you had done it, but it doesn't matter because it gets you the same result. And so now we have a fully constrained sketch, and you might be thinking to yourself, well, okay, let's go ahead and extrude it. But actually, let's add this circle that is cut through our shape to this sketch as well. So I want to grab my circle tool. And if you look, this center circle here has the same center mark as this outer arc here. And so I can see the center of this outer arc. I want to place the center of my circle in the same place and drag, and then type in a diameter of 0.5. And so I'll type in 0.5 and hit enter on my keyboard. And you might think to yourself, well, how can this be 0.5 and this be 0.5? Well, because this is a diameter and this is a radius, meaning this arc has a diameter of 1 inch, something that we said earlier in the video. And so now we have a fully constrained sketch. Let's go ahead and finish it. Hit our home view and hit extrude. And I want to be very careful not to select this circle. I want to just select everything else. I want to drag it and extrude, and you kind of get the idea of why we drew that circle first, so we could have it cut out of the extrusion without having to draw another sketch. But how far does it extrude? If you look, it doesn't actually give us that depth. Once again, you have to do a little bit of math using an arc. And so if we look at this arc right here, it also has a radius of 0.5, and we find the center. That means from the center to this edge is 0.5, and the center to this edge is 0.5. And so from this edge to the center is 0.5, and then from the center to this edge is 0.5. That adds up to a total distance of 1 inch. So let's type that in, 1, and hit OK. And so now this shape is starting to resemble this shape. If we look at it from the front view, we can see that hole is cut out. And so what else do we need to do? Well, we need to add this circular extrusion here and then cut out this hole. And so let's start by adding this extrusion. Let me click on this face and start a new sketch. And I just want to grab my circle tool. And if you notice, this circle is completely centered on this face here. And so the reason why that's important is I can actually take my circle tool and go along this edge. And instead of adding any dimensions to it at all, I'm just going to find the center of this edge. I'm going to hover until I see that X with a triangle right in the center, and I'm going to click there. And then I'm going to click again on this corner here. And if you notice, that automatically fully constrains my sketch. Well, why? Well, because we said this edge has a depth of 1 inch, and I centered this circle right in the middle and then told it to be stuck to the edge. It can't be stuck to this edge without being stuck to this edge. And so what that means is my circle, if I select my dimension tool, has a diameter of 1 inch. I'm going to right click and hit cancel. Because it's stuck to the edge, I didn't have to add any dimensions. Just locking it onto the center and locking it onto the edge made it fully constrained. There was no other way to do it because math. And so I'm going to go ahead and finish my sketch and hit extrude, and I'm going to select this outer circle, drag it down, and how far does it go down? Well, it goes down the entire length. We said earlier that length was 0.5, and so I'll type that in, negative 0.5, to make sure it goes downward, and hit OK. And so now all we have left is that hole cut out of this face. So let's select that face and go to Create New Sketch. And so what is this? Well, it looks like it's a rectangle with 2 circles on the side. And there's a couple ways we could draw that. We could grab our circle tool and draw a couple of circles and then connect them with lines and then start dimensioning it. And that's one way we could draw this. I'm going to go ahead and undo that. Another way we could draw it is to grab our line tool and just draw 2 lines for ourselves. Let me reselect my line tool. And then I could connect these 2 with arcs. And so I could connect these 2 dots with an arc on this side, and then I could do the same thing over here. And that's another way we could draw this shape. I'm going to right click and hit cancel and undo that as well. Let me recenter this so I can see what I'm doing. But if you look, this is actually a very specific shape. This is known as a slot. And so if we go to create and we find our slot tool, I want to select my center to center slot. And then to draw my slot, I'm going to pick a place on the left side of this face and click and drag. And I'm going to pick a place on the right side of this face and click and then drag up. And I have my 2 centers, and now I have the width of my slot. I'm going to click a 3rd time. And now we have this slot shape. I'm going to right click and hit cancel. And I want to go to my home view so I can see what I'm doing. And I do want to make sure this slot has a horizontal line in the middle. So I'm going to select my horizontal vertical constraint, and I'm going to select this line. And It might already be there. If it does, it'll give you an error message. If it's not, it will make it horizontal for you. I'm going to right click and hit cancel, and then I'm going to start adding my dimensions. The first dimension I notice is from center to center is 0.75 wide. So I'm going to grab my dimension tool, and I'm going to select one center to the other center, drag it up, and tell that to be 0.75. And then the second thing I notice is from this center to this edge over here is 1.25. And so let me select this center and this edge over here and drag it up and tell that to be 1.25. And then I notice this slot has a width of 0.5. And so let me select this line to this line and drag it up and tell that to be 0.5. And so you'll notice it's still not fully constrained. Let me right click and hit cancel. And I like to select shapes whenever they're not fully constrained and play with them and see why. And if you notice, it's because it's not centered in this shape from front to back. I cannot move it left to right anymore, but it can still go forward and back. Well, if we look, there are no more dimensions to give this shape. And so what are we missing? Well, if you look very closely, you'll notice that this outer arc and this inner arc have this same center. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a constraint known as the concentric constraint. So I'm going to go to constraints and find concentric. And what this does is it gives two arcs or two circles the same center. So I'm going to select this arc and tell them to have the same center. And it is possible that you drew this slot making it concentric to this. There is a way to do that, and you might have done it accidentally. If so, no big deal. It'll already be fully constrained by adding these three dimensions. In fact, it might not even let you add this 1.25 without giving you an error message. That's no big deal, because if you think about it, if it is concentric with this edge, it has to be 1.25 from this edge, as long as it's fully constrained and in the correct place. But now I'm done with this sketch. I'm going to right click and hit cancel and finish my sketch, and I'm going to extrude cut this all the way through. Hit OK, and if we look, that hole is cut out, and this hole is cut out, and all of our sketches are fully constrained. So we are done with this shape. Let's go ahead and save it, and we will call it shape 12. Hit save, and there you have it.